Okay, we're in the office of Mr. Harvey Sproul today. He is a long-term public servant and lawyer from Lenore City. And so, thank you so much for doing this today. And first of all, I'd like to just know, what is your background during the high school days?
Well, thanks for the invitation to be involved in your series of interviews. And of course, I am really fortunate that I did become involved in Loudon County history. I was born in Williamsburg, Kentucky during the Depression, 1933, and my parents ended up coming to Knoxville, Tennessee, because of the Depression and because my father had found employment as a life insurance salesman. And that was all very interesting to but we survived, and I went through the Fair Garden School at Knoxville and on up into Knoxville High School, well, the Park Junior High School. At that time they had junior high school instead of the, I think, intermediate, is it
Or middle school?
middle school type situation. So high school was only 3 years and the middle school was 3 years. And I was very active. I was not really in athletics except on a sandlot basis, so to speak. But I was sports editor of the newspaper my last year at Knoxville High School. We had, and my last year of Knoxville High School was the last year of Knoxville High School, the old Knoxville High School. And active in other activities, and also Knoxville High School had ROTC like Loudon does now. And so I went through that. Went on to UT, got on the ROTC. When I went to the first year's summer camp, they discharged me. They were looking for pilots, and they wanted, and the fact that I had had eyeglasses since sixth grade, they just let me go. So there I was down in Florida. The only one let go. I had to hitchhike back. But anyway, I went on through very active in civic type activities and governmental type activities, and went to and was a torchbearer, which each year at UT they select 6 or 7 or 8 people who've been outstanding in all phases of university life. And I was a torchbearer. Went on, and then I still had 2 years to go with law school. My brother came through right behind me. He was now living over where my parents live, across the cove from where I live. And how they got here is another thing. But I finished law school, and I guess I said I was the last president of Knoxville High School.
Yeah.
So later on, I organized a Knoxville High School Alumni Association in the 1990s, which is more history both of any county that was around Knox County at the time of the World Fair and some of the other big events that Knox County had, including the bicentennial. And was able out of law school to get a commission in the Army Reserve and served 3 years of active duty as a first lieutenant. When I got out, that was around in 1960, And I looked around to try to find a firm that I could get with that would give me a salary because my wife and my baby son, Daniel Sproul, his name is Daniel Harvey Sproul, I wonder why they named him that, was here, and I needed to have a monthly salary. And there's just wasn't it. It was a situation where I was going to have to open up practice if I were going to practice law and practice by myself to get started. But I did, I think, had contacted university law school people involved with the, what's the word, helping lawyers who graduate find a job. But of course that primarily was putting a sign up, and lawyers could call in. And there was a lawyer that called in from Lenore City and said that he was looking for a young lawyer that was just starting out. He had, I think his last lawyer helping him was Tom Ingram, who had decided to run for General Sessions judge in 1958. And so he had an opening. Mm-hmm. And I accepted and moved to Lenore City, and really not knowing anyone, and as you would do, we ended up finding out that there was one or two I'd gone to college with, but we basically, it was just a new experience.
So who was it that hired you?
So who hired me was Judge S.P. Dannell. He was the senior lawyer at Loudon, and Arthur Fowler from Knoxville had come down to Loudon County back in, I guess, about the time I was born, in 1933, 34, something like that. And so it was Fowler, Dannell and Fowler for many years. S.P. Dannell already had run for office and been elected the second county judge of Loudon County. He had come from over on the mountain, and he married Miss Betsy. Can't remember her, Miss whatever, but she was of a family that had a farm. They had all died, and or moved away or something, and he married her, and so he always was a farmer, so to speak. But he had practiced law in Loudon County, I think, since 1910 or 11. So he was a young lawyer, and so I need to tell you a little bit about the organization of how county executives and county mayors came to be. Well, S.P. Dannell had run for office after he had been here for a while, and then he was elected, and then Arthur Fowler came to be with him. Yeah. And then they practiced law, and then we had World War II, and we had one lawyer in Lenore City, whose name I, of course, did know, but I can't remember right now. And he went into the Army, and he asked if there was someone in Loudon that could take over his practice while he was gone to the Army. And so that's the way Judge Dannell got to Lenore City. Mm-hmm. His term ended in 1950, and Benny Simpson of Loudon was elected county judge in 1953, in 1940, whatever, 1950. So, and he served for 16 years. Now, what was your question? Ed Arnold was a classmate of mine at Knoxville High School, and he came down and was here a couple of years before me, and was elected to the legislature and served one term. But he was involved in several different partnerships. Of course, our General Watkins, excuse me, was elected for our district, and at that time, the lawyers, the counties were in 9 different counties, and that was another reason you traveled around. But Blount County was a part of it, and Monroe, and obviously all the ones that touched Loudon County, except Knox County. And our judge was from Blount County, and Watkins, which Ed Arnold was associated with, was the Attorney General, which was quite unusual for a little county like Loudon County to have a elected in a district of 9 counties. And so we had several lawyers. Just as an aside, right now we have everything has changed tremendously, and we have a number of lawyers. Of course, it's easier, I guess, to get on the interstates and get down to Loudon County, and the TV advertisements. But we have numerous lawyers from Blount and Blount and Knox County, Roane County, so that we don't have as many lawyers actually living in Loudon County that serve.
Okay.
I guess that gets into a little bit of attorney history.
Yes. Okay, let's go into the days leading up to you becoming elected as the 4th Loudon County judge. Off camera, you were telling me about the Justice of the Peace and how it operated. So if you
I don't know. We may get into by the time we get all the way. We may have to have another session. but in olden England, you had your justices of the peace, and everything in the United States is pretty much based upon what happened in England. And a lot of that happened because of the Romans. It's really something to see it kind of carried forward and how it gradually changed. But it's a lot of the basic things are still there. When you first organized the county, you divided it up into districts because you had to have, one of the reasons to have a county is to have an organized government that is closer to the peaceful people. And a lot of times it just had politics in it. Of course, Loudon County always, since the Civil War, has been strongly Republican. The cities have been a pocket, I guess, of Democrats, of the working people, and with more of the farmers and the other professional type people that came, and from the old line families who first came here, descendants that kept them to be Republicans, and that carried over into the Civil War. But you had your districts, and each district had two justices of the peace, sometimes called squires, and maybe another odd name, but basically they were justices of the peace, and they supposed to have kept the peace in their district, and they were scheduled to meet quarterly at the courthouse. And when you have a county, you have to provide certain services, and so you had issuing the driver's license and marriage license and the county clerk's office. All of those offices are still very much the same, and the elected offices in the courthouse, and they worked every day. But the justice of the peace met quarterly, and they set the tax rate to pay for these other things that are happening. And of course, over the period of years and years, the services were kind of followed in the way that happened in cities where you get people living together. You have to have sewers, and you have to have streets, and so you have to have taxes. Mm-hmm. And the county court would set the taxes and appoint certain other officials, like a surveyor, county surveyor, and so forth. Then, over a period of time, things got to be better, and Loudon was this kind of the center. Lenore City was coming along because the Lenore heirs had decided to sell property and create a municipality called Lenore City. And
it was 1907, right?
And that was in 1907, and they created a cotton mill up there. That was part of what they did, and I think something associated with farming type matters. And then some way or another they got the Lenore Car Works, so the Southern Railway created a factory there, for which many Lenore Cityans worked at the factory. But now when you're talking about many, at that time I think you're talking about 200 or 300 or something like that. And it gradually reduced as Charles Bacon had created the bacon mills in Loudon, also did the same in Lenore City, and that provided another bunch of jobs and kind of kept them going until the Second World War. And in Loudon you had the chair company, which was their livelihood along with the hosiery mill, and you had the Charles H. Bacon Hospital, which was a good idea, and we got certain grants to create that hospital, donated on the land donated by Charles H. Bacon. We're talking about governance of the county court. When the squires got together, they elected a chairman, so you had the chairman of the county court. We still have that now, but back then he was still the justice of the peace, and the others were. Hardly any of the others ever really had a trial. It was mostly what's in like General Sessions Court today, owing money, people money, owing businesses money, just all the lower caliber of offenses, of traffic offenses and stealing and other types of things that we know of that are basically the same. since biblical times probably, but it got to be more and more people and more of those things happening. And so one of the things that concerned the people in Lenore City was that they were greatly outnumbered on the county court. The quarterly county court decided that they needed a judicial person to make decisions about legal matters that the justices of the peace were handling. And excuse me while I get a drink of water.
Okay.
I don't know, you might want to intersperse questions in between this long thing, but I'm about there.
Okay.
So they decided that they needed to have a county judge to make decisions about will contests and juvenile type matters that occurred more regularly, and in preliminary hearings on any kind of crime that is, including murder, that might occur. And so what was concocted by someone in the state was to have a county judge who would handle all those things rather than the justices of the peace. And they had the election in 1920, and the legislature met in the spring, and of course there was a lot of negotiating going on as to what part of Blount County would come into Loudon County, and maybe you're going to get some history on exactly where that was, but of course, you know, basically across the river from Lenore City and all across over into Highway 411 came from Blount County. We got a big whack from that, and then on down the road from Blount County on 411 we had Monroe County, and we got some of Roane County, and I guess maybe a little bit of Anderson County. I'm not sure about that. And so we made Loudon County back in the beginning, and you had the districts and the cities of Greenback, Lenore City, Loudon, and Philadelphia all got an additional JP, so that they had 3 representatives. There was these little towns. And so at the time in 1920, I don't know exactly who all was what was happening, but in those situations, the first person holder of the office is part of the legislation, and so the first one was a Democrat, because the legislature was Democratic, and the Greers had and the Bacons and others of those families there. Well, I right now can't think of some of the other names. Had jurisdiction over influencing the legislation approved by the governor. Appointed a Democrat to be the first county judge of Loudon County, but he only served for about 3 or 4 months, and then you had the first election, and S.P. Dannell was elected. The young lawyer S.P. Dannell ran for office, and was elected to be the first county judge, and he organized that office. Had the office in the back of the first floor, next to the county clerk and so forth. And he had the law office across the street above the drugstore next to Greer's Hardware Company. They had the Daniel and Fowler offices were above the drugstore. That was his part-time, but it was close where he could get back and forth easily. So there's two or three things that rose out of that legislatively about equalization and apportionment.